beautiful freaking souls. So welcome back to another episode of Love Up with Gal. I am your host, Gal Perino, where we dive in deep in every freaking episode. I drop nuggets and tips and tidbits and good info for you so you can help yourself level up in your freaking life. So today I want to talk to you about why it's so important to acknowledge our past and the way we grew up and how it actually affects the way you think today, why you do the things that you do today. Like, if you don't ever slow down and pay attention to how you grew up, why things happen the way they did, there's a lot of blind spots that you may not even notice and see. Why do I react that way? Why do certain things trigger the fuck out of me? And some things don't, right? Why do things make you do the things that you do or react the way that you do? Before we dive in even further, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss any new episodes with your girl Gal. I appreciate you so freaking much, every single one of you. And I'm so proud of you for continuing to love up in your life and tuning back in. If you are returning, I love you. Thank you so much for being here. If you are brand new, welcome to the tribe, and where you can truly be your true authentic self here. And that is truly my mission, is to help you show up as your true authentic self every single day, to be who you are, not to mimic a bunch of other people, to be exactly who you are, because you are so special in your own freaking way. So let's dive in deeper today and talk about why it's so important to revisit some of the things that really hurt us, that makes it so difficult for us to go forward in our life, right? And you're like, what do you mean by that? What I mean by that is for us to revisit certain moments in our life that really was traumatic, and start to look and to see, what did you do? What band-aid did you put on? And to help you process that so you can keep going forward. A lot of times what happens is we have something happen in our childhood and then we don't want to revisit it because there's so much pain with it. We put a band-aid on it, and sometimes multiple band-aids again and again and again. And then, but actually, not even that. But that doesn't mean that you have actually healed from it. See what I'm saying? Just because you put a bunch of band-aids on it and that band-aid is part thick on your skin, okay? Multiple layers, right? And you're like, gosh, it still really bothers me, but I'm good. I'm going to move forward. So I'm going to share a quick story with you. So when I was a kid and when my parents got divorced and my dad eventually was no longer in my life, long story short, I put band-aids over the pain that I felt and trying to understand, like, what did I do wrong? What happened? Did I do something wrong that contributed to that? I was a kid. I didn't do anything wrong. But as a kid, as you're trying to process this trauma and what happened to you, you don't fully understand that. So I put a band-aid on it, on my wound, right? And hoping that it's going to heal, and it's going to heal. But I'm telling you something, it didn't fully ever healed, not throughout my childhood. And a lot of what happened to me after that event, that was very traumatic in my life. But after that, the way I reacted things would be like a certain way, and I'll be reactive, right? When someone asks me, oh, where's your dad? How come you talk about your dad? I immediately lost my shit, like as if I was like super offended that you even asked me a fucking question about my dad. Like, what is wrong with you? You're so freaking rude. But you see how it went from 0 to 100 in that quick moment because someone asked me, but that's because that wound wasn't healed. That wound had that thick band-aid on it. Right? And no matter like how much Neosporin you put on that bad boy, it did not heal because I was like pushing it aside, saying like, I'm good. I move forward. If I move forward, then I don't need to revisit it. But that is not true. And when I say revisit, a lot of times people say like, if I revisit it, there's so much pain, right? And I don't want to feel that pain again. But I don't want you to think of it in that way. When you revisit what happened to you, I want you to revisit it from a bird's eye view, to look at that situation or situations that happened in your life from above. Like, so you can start to understand how that affected you, but that doesn't mean you have to relive through the pain and going back to experience, like, you're not going back to experience the pain and the moment, because really you can't, even if you try to go back, right, and you talk about the moment, you can't change what's happened. What's happened has happened. We can't change the past. If we could, that would be pretty badass, but that is not possible. Things happen in our life for a reason. There's lessons that came with that. So I really want you to take a different perspective in that. When you think of going back or reflecting back. Actually, let's not even say going back. Let's say reflecting back to certain things has happened in your life that has caused you to be the way you are, super reactive, or maybe really closed off because you have these strong boundaries on your heart now because people have hurt you in your life, right? So for me personally, I put a lot of walls up and I did not share a lot with people. If I was to tell myself, gosh, 15 years ago or whatever. I mean, even that 7-year-old little girl that one day you're going to be sharing your story and your stories to help other people heal on their journey. I would have been like, are you crazy? There's no freaking way that's happening. Like, pump the brakes. Like, there's no way, because I never even wanted to talk about my journey or anything that was going in my life, because I was like, no, like, I don't want people to know because they're going to look down on me. I don't want people to know that my father's not in my life. I don't want people to know that my parents got divorced, because a lot of the kids that I grew up around, they had their mom and dad, and I started to look at it as if it was like, downfalls that was in my life or that I had, even though it was out of my control. But do you see how, because of an event that happened and I started to protect myself, I started to see things a certain way, that I started to have certain habits, right? As I got older, I didn't want to open up. I didn't want to share anything with people. And I was very, very quiet. I had really strong boundaries to protect my heart because I didn't want my heart broken again. And even when I was in my relationships, I was super, super reactive, where if we got into fights, I would just go crazy to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, feeling super attacked. And then that's not necessarily what happened. Doesn't mean that I was in necessarily great relationships either, but because of what happened to me in my life as a child, as I grew up older and I got older and older, certain things would trigger those memories and trigger those feelings that I had during when that trauma happened. So the point I'm trying to make is, certain things happen in our life, certain trauma, certain events, right? We all have trauma, all different kind of trauma. Some of us have similar trauma. But my point is, if you don't reflect back to understand from a bird's eye view, to look at the situation that's happened to you, to understand and process those emotions, it's going to hold you back, because certain things in your life, as you get older and older, it's going to trigger you and take you right back to that moment. And you may not even realize it. You may not even realize that you've been operating from that moment or moments in your life. And even though you're around different people, if they see certain things or they make you feel a certain way, that is triggering you. See what I mean? So it's really important to reflect back to certain things that's happened in your life, especially the things that you may not want to talk about because it scares you or brings up a bunch of emotions and it might make you upset. I'm telling you to reflect back and look at it from a different perspective. Like, let me look back at that situation or situations and let me learn from it so I can learn about me. It's not about who hurt you, and it's not about like who you can get back at. It's nothing like that. It's about getting to know yourself and letting yourself heal and process your emotions so you can truly move forward and no longer let those things traumatically make you reactive. You know what I mean? Like, if you continue to just push forward, and I'm speaking this from experience, it makes it harder for you to actually be able to process what's happened to you, because you can keep going forward all you want all day. Like, trust and believe, I did that for a long time, but it never felt like I was there. Never felt like I healed from a certain situation. I still felt like in every relationship I was in, I had a fear that they were going to leave me, because I had the fear because of my dad leaving. I had a fear that every boyfriend I had was going to leave me. So it kind of turned me into like really a jealous kind of crazy girlfriend. It's like, oh, where are you at? Like, what's it going on? Like, are you mad at me? Like, it sounds kind of ridiculous. But because of the events that's happened in my life, I ended up being super worried all the time, right? And super concerned that every person that was in my life, friends or a relationship, they would hurt me or they would leave me, right? So then it turned me into a people pleaser, because I wanted to keep people in my life, especially if I really liked them and I want them to like me too. And then I started to morph into other people and groups because I didn't want them to, not like me or to leave me, because of that moment of being left and not having one of my parents in my life. All of a sudden, as I got older, I was just Like, I was a professional people pleaser. That's what I call it. Because I was like, okay, I just started to change and more to other people. And who can relate to that? Have you done that too, where you're a people pleaser? You don't know how to say no. You're like a yes man, a yes lady. You say yes to everything. You want to make everyone happy and, rainbows and butterflies and everything. Can you relate to that? Because that was me. And then when I was saying no, I felt so guilty and I felt bad and I thought people would be mad at me and they want to leave me and not be my friend anymore. And then, I would be a loser. And that's how my mind will operate. You see how the overthinking, like you just go down this rabbit hole and it's like boom, 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 boom. Holy shit, right? So it's like pump the brakes, right? And everything started to change when I started to allow myself to revisit moments in my life that's happened. Like how did that really feel? And how did that affect my life as I got older and through my jobs, through my career, how I am in my personal life with friends, family, how I feel about myself. So I want you to ask yourself the same thing, right? What has happened? Take a moment right now. What is a moment in your life that caused a lot of trauma? Maybe one of your parents wasn't in your life too. Or maybe they were. Maybe you were abused as a kid. Or maybe you were like bully as a kid, right? And as soon as I was saying that, I was like choking up, and I experienced that, being bullied, go back to your country. Like, why don't you look like us? And, from the days that I got bullied, I have always remember to treat other people kindly because I never want anyone to feel the way I felt. It's just so mean to, and I always say, like, I was born here. Like, no, you weren't. Like, how are you going to literally argue with me that I wasn't born here in the US? And they're like, kids would be so harsh. Like, show me your birth certificate, go back to your country, say something in your language, like, why do you look different than us? Because I remember going to school, I was like, truly, my brother and I were the only Asian kids. And I remember when there was the first Black kid that came to school, I was like so thankful because I was like, oh, thank goodness, someone like someone else, because we would get picked on and made fun of because we didn't look like them. And I used to think, like, how can I make myself look more, like other people? Which is also where it turned into people pleasing. Like, how can I morph myself to fit in and not get made fun of? You know what I mean? And being picked on, it's not nice and it's not kind. So don't do it. But start to think of a moment in your life when you had a trauma that happened, or maybe you didn't get to do a sport because you always had to babysit your siblings. Maybe you didn't get to go on certain trips because your parents couldn't afford it. It could be anything, everything. And just because you grew up with a mom and dad doesn't mean there wasn't trauma. Okay. So for example, I know someone who grew up with mom and dad, and they were so loving that actually it hindered him because he didn't know how to do anything. And who would have thought that having super loving parents would actually cause some kind of trauma? You know what I mean? So just because you have both parents doesn't mean that your life is golden and good, And I know someone else who was like one of my clients struggles with actually making decisions because he never had to make any decisions in his life. He grew up with a mom and dad, but they made every decision for him. They shelter him. And now he's like, I struggle big time. So we're working through that, but maybe you're going through something similar like that. But whatever your trauma is, think of that moment, look at it from a bird's eye view, like we were discussing earlier, and start to see how it made you feel during that time and how it has affected your life every single year since then, how it has turn you to the person that you are, good and bad. Maybe you're like me, you're super determined now. Because since that moment when that happened to me as a kid, I was like, I'm gonna figure things out. Nothing's gonna stop me. And I'm super freaking determined in anything that I do. Maybe you can relate to something like similar to that. But I want you to realize that looking back at past events doesn't mean you have to relive through that. And if you do feel the emotions come up where you want to cry, let yourself cry through it. Especially if you're feeling that means that you haven't let yourself truly feel those emotions, and it's coming up for you, and it's coming up for a reason to help you, even if it feels like it might be hurtful. Trust and believe that when you allow yourself to feel the way you do and you go through those emotions, it helps you start your own healing journey. It starts to help you understand who you are, why you're the way you are. And overall, this whole episode, what I want you to learn is the more you give yourself time to learn about yourself, the more you can start to heal on your healing journey, and the more you start to understand who you are, the easier it actually is in life. So when you understand who you are and you know yourself and you start to understand what those habits are and where they come from, you can start to see what areas in your life you want to work on. Right? Maybe you're just like, yeah, I'm a people pleaser too, gal. I need help. Like I want to be a retired, I call myself a retired professional people pleaser. Maybe that's something that you want to work on too. And I used to struggle with showing myself love and showing up for myself, just because I was so focused on other people all the freaking time. You know what I mean? So maybe you're like, okay, I want to focus on that too. But it's really hard to know which direction to go forward if you don't actually know where you're at and what areas in your life you need to work on. You know what I mean? So take some time to get to know yourself and some time to reflect and jot down all the traumatic moments in your life and trauma. And I want you to do it from a mindset of thinking like, I'm going to jot these moments down so I can look at these moments from above and see how they made me feel. You know, I would literally write like the moments and then like right next to it, another column, like how it made you feel. And then next to that, I would recommend you write like how it has affected your life, the certain habits or reactions you had picked up because of certain moments in your life. And then after that, I would recommend you put what areas in your life you want to work on, because then you can start to put the pieces together, connect the dots. Like, oh my gosh, where you do need to hire a professional to help you. Trust and believe. I have spent years like downloading free knowledge, and then I was like, I'm still freaking stuck. Like, how do I get to the next level quicker? And how do I learn more quicker? And everything changed for me when I hired my first mentor. And maybe you can't afford that yet. Or maybe you want to. So start to save up, right? And find the best mentor that is going to work for you and the best coach that you vibe with that can help you get to the next freaking level. So I hope you found this episode super helpful. Remember to spend some time with you. Get to know who you are so you can start to show up as who you freaking are and your true authentic self. We're all different for a reason. Let's embrace that and bring that to the surface and to the freaking light and not dim that light and try to be like somebody else. Like, why do you want to be like someone else? You came to have this human experience to be you, not to be somebody else. So I can't stress that freaking enough. If you are struggling or anything, reach out to me, email me, lifecoach@galprayno.com. Please follow my social media. I put out a bunch of free content to help you level up in your life. Gal_Prano on all the social platforms. So follow me. I appreciate you. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and freaking leave a review if you found this episode helpful. I love you so much and you're so freaking amazing. Never stop showing up for yourself. I can't stress that enough. Don't let anyone dim your light, even if it's your parent who is like doubting you and telling you you're not good enough. The only person who needs to believe that you're good enough is freaking you. I believe you, and now is the time to start working on believing in yourself. No matter if 100 people told you that they believe in you, it does not hit the same until you freaking believe in yourself. So keep showing up for yourself. I love you so much, and I will freaking catch you next time.